Hello everyone. So in this video I will explain to you one of the most, let's say, important tool in the automotive, and also it's a part of the core tools according to the IATF. So as we see in the previous video, we see the IPQP. So if anyone would like to go back to the IPQP, so I will put the link of the video in the description. And right now we will see the second tool of the core tools in the automotive industry, which is the PPAP, the production part approval process. So this is one of the most, as I said, important core tools in the automotive industry, and also it includes more or less all the other core tools according to MECA, SPC, FMEA. We can find them inside the PPAP, and also the PPAP, it's a part of the IPQP. As we see in the last video, it's in the last, let's say, in the phase 4 of the IPQP, we have to deliver the whole, let's say, package of the PPAP. So it's linked, all the core tools are linked. So for this reason, we will see a series of the, let's say, of the core tools in the automotive industry, and this is the second video. So here the production part approval process. Firstly, we will see just a small, let's say, definition of the IAAG in the 4th edition. So what they said, or what is the purpose of the PPAP. So this 4th edition of the PPAP, it says that the purpose of the PPAP is to determine if all customer engineering design record and specification requirements are properly understood by the organization, and thus the manufacturing process has the potential to produce consistently, meeting these requirements during an actual production run at the quoted production rate. So let's summarize. So the PPAP, let's say, it's one of the part of homologation of your production, and also it's agreement that contains all the customer specific requirements inside. So once you deliver the PPAP, it's like you say to your customer that you are able, let's say, to produce the product according to the specifications, all the specifications, product specifications, capacity specifications, let's say, characteristic specifications, machines, everything, and also to be sure that the customer will always receive a conforming product all away the cycle time of or the lifetime of this project. In general, in the automotive industry, we are finding that the project take more or less 5 years. So this is the reason why we are making the PPAP. So in order to show or to prove to your customer that you are able to produce, let's say, to produce this product according to their specifications, and as I said, according to all the specifications. So we will see in details what the PPAP contains inside, and when we can submit the PPAP, and how we can approve it. So let's continue. So firstly or secondly, we will see the scope of application. So when exactly we have to submit the PPAP to our customer. So firstly, it's once we have a new developed product or design. So as we see in the previous video, so the IPQP, it's made to manage new development of new production of new product, let's say. And as we see in the last, or in the phase 4 of the IPQP, we have to deliver the PPAP. So whenever we have a new developed product, we have to submit the PPAP to our customer. So, and we should never start the production, it means the SOP, the start of production, the serial production life, without receiving the approval, let's say, PPAP from our customers. So at this phase, whenever we have a new production, new development of new design or of new product, we have to build, let's say, the PPAP, all the package, send it to the customer, receive let's say, receive the approval, then we have to start the production. Secondly, whenever we have design or process modification, so imagine that you have already in the serial production life, and once you have any modification, you have to have the customer approval before. So if you see, for example, that your design could be optimized, your process could be changed or optimized, whenever you have to remove a characteristic or to add additional operation, or even to update, for example, your raw material characteristic and so on. So whenever you have any modification, firstly, you have to request the customer approval. Then if the customer approve it, you have to submit a new p.p.a.p, let's say, package to the customer depending of the modification you made. Obviously, the first, let's say, submission of the p.p.a.p, whenever you have a new production, it has all, let's say, the items. It's not the 18 items we will see. It depends of your let's say, product characteristics, and it depends of your project. But at least you have a full package of the p.p.a.p. But whenever you have, let's say, a design or process modification, maybe you will not, let's say, send the full p.p.a.p package, but only what items are, let's say, impacted by this modification. Thirdly, whenever you have a new tooling or a new machine, imagine you have, for example, a process where you are producing a current production, and imagine, for example, your capacity, you cannot reach the capacity of your customer, or if the customer rise the volume or the capacity that is requested to you, then you have to increase your capacity, let's say, and you have to, for example, to buy new machines, to build new process, to buy new tools to double your capacity, and so on. So whenever you have a new tooling or new machines, you have to submit again new p.p.a.p, let's say, to your customer. Fourthly, whenever you have a new layout, process chart, or movement of the process to another plant. So whenever you move, because one of the parts or one of the items of your p.p.a.p, it's the process flow. So firstly, the customer agreed about this p.p.a.p and approved this process, let's say, process flow chart. Whenever you move anything, any machines, any, let's say, tools, if you move to a new plant, to a new process, and so on, you have before to inform your customer, and if they agreed, you have to submit a new p.p.a.p. Because imagine when you would like, for example, to move a machine. Obviously, you will switch off this machine, then you will move it and you will switch it on. So maybe let's say the machine, let's say, parameters, maybe they could be changed. So for this reason, you have to inform your customer. Maybe they will ask for new product, maybe they will ask for the capability of the machine and of your process, maybe they will ask for the MSA, and so on and so on. So it depends. So for this reason, whenever you will change your layout, your process flow, whenever you will move to a new plant, you have to ask the customer agreements, then to submit for a new p.p.a.p. Also, whenever you stop the production for a period more than 1 year, so whenever the root cause, whether COVID, for example, when we was in Corona, if, for example, the volume of the production was very low, then imagine you had, for example, 2 lines and the volume was, let's say, down, and then you start to use only one production line for 1 year. Then the volume start to be raised again, and you will use again the second production line that will stop it for 1 year. In this case, you have to submit again your p.p.a.p because those machines, those processes will stop it for 1 year, so we don't know what's happened. So for this reason, you have to prove again to your customer that this, let's say, production line is qualified to produce good parts. Also, yearly qualifications. So many of the customers, many of the OEMs, they are requesting for yearly qualification. It means every year you have to submit again a new p.p.a.p submission. Maybe it's not the full package, but sometimes, for example, some customers, they are asking for every year you have to submit the PSW, the capability, MSA, and so on and so on. So it depends of the customer specific requirements of the CSRs of your customer. So you have to check it. Then you have to see the frequency of the qualification. Some customers are asking for every year, some others are asking for every 3 years, and some others, they don't even ask for yearly qualification. So be aware, if the CSRs contains this yearly qualification, you have to be prepared, and every year you have to submit a new, let's say, p.p.a.p submission to your customer. Otherwise, the previous p.p.a.p was not, let's say, you cannot, let's say, ship the parts because the previous one was already expired. So also the machine process tool transfer. So if you would like to transfer, let's say, the machines or the project to another plant, even this project was already approved and the p.p.a.p was already approved in another plant, and you would like to make the transfer, obviously you have to submit again a new p.p.a.p to your customer. So this is more or less the scope of application when we have to submit the PPAP to the customer. So here it's an example of the process flow. So here we have the one who is initiating, let's say, obviously it's the customer. Here the organization, it's you if you are the supplier, and then here we have the customer, it's the same. So firstly we have the request from the customer. So the customer requests you or make the kickoff of a project and asked you for a new product. So here the request is coming from, let's say, from the customer with the customer specific requirements, with the drawing, with the design FMEA, so with all the characteristics and requirements. So then here the organization, or you if you are the supplier, so here you have to manage it whether in the IPQP and so on, and at the end you have to submit the PPAP to your customer. Then the customer, here it's the same one, then the customer is verifying your PPAP package and gives you the feedback. So whether approve it at 100% or interim means that he has some comments, some observations, and you have to correct them in a period of time, or it's rejected, means all your PPAP is rejected and you have to build a new one again. And sometimes here, as we see, we have supplier initiated changes, as I told you. So whenever you have a change, so you have to request it to your customer first, then if they approve it, then they will give you the green light and you have to start to make the change, then to submit the PPAP to your customer for approval. So here, as I told you before, the PPAP has 18 elements. Not all of them are, let's say, are required always, but it depends, let's say, of the product, of the customer, of the product characteristics, of the customer specific requirements, and so on. So we will read 18 let's say elements of the PPAP, and I will explain one by one. So the first one, it's the design record. So the design record, it's the drawing. So what is the drawing of your product? If it's not physical part, for example, some chemical parts and so on, so maybe this one, it could be replaced by the characteristic of the product. If it's, as I told you, if it's a chemical part. The second element, it's engineering change document, if any. This one, it's not applied for the first submission because there is no, let's say, engineering change. But whenever we have, as I told you, a new modification, whether it's coming from your supplier or from your organization or from your customer, you have to have this engineering change document. So if you are the initiated one of the change, so you have to describe all the changes, all the modification to your customer, and to submit firstly the modification to your customer. So this is what I would like to modify. This is the initial drawing, this is after updates, this is the cost impact, this is the risk assessments, and so on. So everything concerning this change, it should be in one document and send it to the customer. So once they approve it, you can start the modification. So if you build the PPAP according to those changes, so you have to add these elements of all the description of the changes with the customer approval. And this is third element, it's the customer engineering approval. So once you receive the customer engineering approval about your change, so you have to add it in the third element. Fourthly, it's the design FMEA. So the design FMEA, it shows you what are the failures about your change. So if you are, let's say, the one who is developing the design of the product, so you have to make the design FMEA. Sometimes, it's not sometimes, but always, let's say, the design FMEA, it's let's say a confidential document and we cannot communicate it to our customer, but at least you have to make the cover sheet, what are the updates and what are the severities and so on of this product without communicating the whole, let's say, documents of the design FMEA. The fifth element is the process flow diagram, which is describing all the steps and sub-steps of your process. The sixth element is the process FMEA, so all the failures regarding your process FMEA. So I have already made a video regarding a reverse FMEA, but I will do in the future also, let's say, a video of the process FMEA, because the FMEA, it's a part also of the core tools, and I decided to make, let's say, a series of the core tools. Here, the seventh one, it's the control plan. So it's the output of your FMEA. So whenever you are making all the failures mode, all the risks, all the potential risks regarding your process, so then you have to build your control plan in order to avoid any issues regarding your customer. So then you have to build your control plan. So this is the seventh element. Eight elements, it's the measurement system analysis, it's the MSA. So you have to prove to your customer that your measurement system is able to measure and to provide, let's say, reliable measurement results. This also, it's a part of the core tools, and I will make also a video later on regarding the MSA. The ninth one, it's the dimensional results. So you have to measure all the dimensions, all the characteristics of your products, and put it in one files, and then send it to the customer to cross-check with the parts, because the let's say the p.p.a.p package has documents and also has p.p.a.p samples, which are the physical samples, because the customer needs to launch the functional, let's say, tests in his production, and also to measure the dimension of those, let's say, samples, to check if they are matching with what you are producing, and with the drawing and with the specifications. So whenever you are sending those samples, you have to measure the dimensions and send them to the customer. So then the customer, whenever he's receiving the p.p.a.p samples with the package of the p.p.a.p, including the dimensional reports, so they are taking those samples, they are making the same measurement, then they are cross-checking between the measurement, the dimensional measurement you made, and the results of the control they made. Then they are comparing if they will get the same results or not, because this is the reason why they are doing that, because sometimes you are not using the same, let's say, tools, the same measurement tools. Sometimes you are using the caliper and the customer are using the comparator, so it's not the same. Or sometimes you are using the attribute gauge and the customer are using the variable gauge, so sometimes you are not getting the same, let's say, results. For this reason, the customer are cross-checking the dimensional with the physical parts to see if they can get the same results or if there is some mismatching. So let's go now to the 10th elements. It's the material performance test results. So if the product has any characteristics and any specifications regarding the material performance, so you have to make those tests and to submit it to your customer. The 11th elements is the initial process studies, which is the capabilities. So you have to make the capabilities CPK, PPK, and to prove to your customer that your process are capable to produce good parts. So I will make also another video regarding the capabilities CPK and PPK. The 12th one, it's qualified laboratory documentation. So if you have internal laboratory, or if you are, let's say, working with external laboratory, obviously you have to have some qualification according to whether ISO standard or to according to, let's say, to the customer specific requirements. So if the customer is requesting any, let's say, tests, any measurements and controls regarding such, let's say, laboratory, external laboratories, so you have to work with those external laboratory, and you have to prove to your customer that they are already qualified, let's say, laboratory. 13th, it's appearance approval reports, if applicable. So whenever you have appearance or visible, let's say, parts, you have to show to your customer that your products are according to the appearance approval reports. Imagine if you have, for example, all the parts that are inside the car are visible. So sometimes you have to prove to your customer that the green are good, that the color it's according to the specifications, and so on. But if you have, for example, a physical product which is inside the engine, for example, which is not visible, so maybe this item it's not applicable. 14, it's the sample product. So as I told you, so whenever you are sending the p.p.a.p package documents, you have also to send the sample products to your customer. Firstly, to allow to your customer to make some functional test. It means to assemble it or to use it in their production to see if the parts functionally are okay or not, and also to make some measurements to compare it with the dimensional results you made before. 15th, it's the master sample. So sometimes the customer, especially for the visual and aspect, let's say product, the customer, for example, and the supplier had a lot of issues regarding the colors, the grain and so on. So the customer decides sometimes to create some master samples to see, to say to their supplier that the product should be looks like this one. So if it's applicable, you have also to build the physical master sample. The 16th one, it's the check-in aids. So whenever you are using some special, let's say, equipment, gauges, and so on, according to the request of your customers, so you have to list all the check-in aids regarding your, let's say, customer requirements, and also to make the MSA of those gauges. 17, it's the records of compliance. So if the customer has any compliance, so or any specifications, so you have to include it in your p.p.a.p. And the 18th one, it's the PSW, which we will see in the next page in details. So here, this one is the PSW. So the PSW, it's the cover sheet of the p.p.a.p, which is including all the informations about the p.p.a.p. So let's see some of the most important elements that you have, let's say, to fulfill in your in the PSW. So here we have the part name. So what is the designation of your name of your product? Here we have the customer part number. So what is the reference or the production part number? Here, if there is any engineering change, any modifications, so you have to make here the level and the dates. We have here, if for example your product is safety and or government regulations, so if it's yes or no, so you have to cross here yes or no. We have here the weight of your product, the chicken aids, let's say list. Here it's all the informations about your organization, and here all the informations regarding your customer. Then here you have the IMDS, so you have to cross yes, because in general in the automotive industry, the IMDS, it's one of the most important and regulation, let's say, items. It's regarding the recyclability of your product. So we have to cross here yes, and to put the number of the IMDS. And here we have the reason for submission. So what is the reason? Is it, as I told you previously, is it initial submission, engineering change, tool transfer, correction, tooling inactive more than 1 year? So all the reasons I explained to you before. So whenever you have any new submission, so you have to cross here the reason of this p.p.a.p, let's say. And after that we have the submission level. So in general we have 5 submission level. It depends of the, let's say, reason for submission. I will explain to you in the next page in details what does it mean, the level, the submission level. So then here we have the submission results. So whenever you have additional results, if you made, for example, dimensional measurement, you have to cross it here. If you have material and functional tests, you have to cross it here, appearance criteria and MSA statistical controls. And here it's all the information about the one who build and create this p.p.a.p. And the last here information, it's let's say used by your customer. So whenever you are sending all the package of the p.p.a.p plus this PSW, the customer should here made the statements. So whether they approve it, reject it, or other, it means interim. So you have to receive this feedback from your customers. So if you have any audits regarding the VDA 6.3 or regarding IATF, and if the auditor is checking one part of the p.p.a.p and didn't find the customer approval from any of the p.p.a.p, this is a non-conformity. So you have to push sometimes your customer to get the approval of your p.p.a.p. So whether they made approval, rejected, or other, it means interim. So if it's other or interim, so the customer should explain what is the reason of interim, and they have to give you all the recommendation or what is the gaps or the non-conformities that you have to update, and you have to do it. Then you have to submit a new p.p.a.p regarding the updates to your customer. Then you have to push them again to give you the last status, which is approved. So always you have the approval, or if they gives you, for example, the status with interim, in general interim it's maximal of 6 months. So if the customer put here the dates of expired dates of interim, for example, after 6 months, and you didn't submit a new PPAP and you didn't get the approval, it means the previous approval is already expired and you are not allowed to ship the parts to your customer. So you have to submit a new PPAP before the expiration date of the interim, and then the customer should put his signature, his name, and so on, just for traceability. So you have to have this PSW for all your product with the approval of your customer. And if you are the customer, so whenever you are receiving the PPAP package from your supplier, you have to check all elements if they are okay or not. Then you have to give to them your status, if it's approved, rejected, or if it's interim. So let's go now. I will explain to you quickly what does it mean, the submission level. So there is 5 levels, as I told you. So let's read it here. So the level 1, it's a warrant only, and for designed appearance items and appearance approval reports submitted to the customer only. It means that whenever you have only the warrant parts, which is the PSW only, plus the designed appearance items and appearance approval report, this means that it's level 1, and you have to cross check here the level 1 of in your PSW. Level 2, it's warrant with product samples and limited supporting data submitted by the customer. So it means if your let's say submission contains only PSW plus product samples plus some limited supporting, so you have to make level 2. In general, this one, for example, if we have yearly qualification, maybe the customer will ask you to send him only some product samples with limited supporting data, and maybe you can make the level 2. Level 3, it's warrant with product samples and complete supporting data submitted to the customer. So level 3, it's when you have in general the initial submission of the PPAP. So when you have the full package of the PPAP, when I said the full package, it's not always the 18 elements, but the full package means that the initial submission depending of the customer what he is requiring, and it depending of the product characteristics. Level 4, warrant and other requirements as defined by the customer. Here also, whenever we have some updates, some engineering change, so maybe the customer will ask you for the PSW plus all the elements that are impacted by this change. And the level 5, it's warrant with product samples and complete supporting data reviewed at the organization manufacturing location. Let's summarize this in order to not make you, let's say, crazy. So in general, you will use those 2 levels. I am recommending to use those 2 levels. Level 3 for the full package for the initial reports, and level 4 for any changes. Because why? Here we have level 4, it's more or less including all the other levels. Level 4, we have warrant and other requirements as defined by the customer. So whenever we have modification, yearly qualification, anything, so you can consider it as level 4. So to summarize, if you have initial submission, you can make level 3, and if you have any modification, you can cross check here level 4 and submit the PPAP to your customer. So I think this is more or less all what you will need regarding the PPAP, regarding the production part approval process. So if you have any questions regarding that, don't hesitate to put it in the comments and I will explain it. I will try to answer to everyone, and see you in the next video. So I will see if I will start by the FMEA or MSA, but in general I decided to make videos for all the core tools in the automotive industry. So bye bye and see you next time.